Alright, so this is my other phone. Dan Faber bought this for me. He bought this phone that I'm using so that I could turn in the phone that I lost to the police so they could see what was going on. The phone that they outright refused to look at. But they had no problems breaking it. See, after I got my phone back, the broken one, from Boulder Police Department, it had a screen overlay on it that made using it damn near impossible. This is McDonald's. So I'm making this video because this is the kind of stuff that I have to resort to. We just spent several hours trying to get this working so that I could use it. I can't really buy a card to put on it, because if I buy a card to put on it, then all the information that's on it gets lost. And this phone has some information from that Missy Layla Johnson lady, as well as some screenshots and some other important info. And I'm going to need to use this phone in order to save even more info, because this phone, same model, is full. So is my computer. And just in case one of those pieces of information gets lost, this right here has a lot of information that's also on my computer. If I lose one, I still have the other. There's a lot of people that were offering to help, but they wanted to know where I could have them send that stuff, and I didn't know where to have them send it. I still don't. And although speaking out may not do any good, I gotta hope that it will, because when it comes down to it, somebody's got to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. If speaking out is all that I'm allowed to do, that's what I'll do. And although it's actually illegal now, slavery was legal once too. Matter of fact, it's still legal. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. That was introduced during the Civil War. See, the Civil War was fought over states' rights to own people. The southern states felt that it was their right to own human beings because the Bible has rules about how to treat your slave. Did they treat their slaves that way? No. Don't matter though. That 13th Amendment made it so that anybody who's convicted of a crime can be used for slave labor. That's your community service. Boulder County is one of the largest human traffickers in the United States per capita. The amount of free labor that they get out of homeless people by unreported court dates and unreported court appointments is kind of gross. See, you have this thing called a deferred sentence. You complete your deferred sentence and they don't have to report it. They don't report your ticket because you committed a deferred sentence. You fulfilled your obligations for that deferred sentence. Although really what they like to do is put you on probation because you're too poor for a real lawyer. And they lock you up and they leave you there and leave you there and leave you there and leave you there until finally you plead guilty to a crime so that you can be let free. You don't have to be guilty. Then they'll like to put you on 2 years of probation or just short of it. And then in the last 2 to 3 months of your probation, they violate you for it. You don't have to do anything wrong. They'll still violate you. They will hunt you down. Your probation officer will let the officers know that your probation is almost over, and they'll come and get you so they can get more revenue. That's an alarm. The 13th Amendment, after the end of the Civil War, the road to Charleston was lined with black people hanging from telegraph poles, light poles, things of that nature. Thousands of them. The grandfather clause made it so that most of these black people couldn't own property, so they had to rent. So they used Roman rental agreements, which we use to this day, but it's not just for blacks, it's also for whites. This is where, if you have the money to purchase a place, it'll cost you about 1/3 the amount that it'll cost you to rent a place. And so all these black people were too poor to rent a place. They were put back into cotton fields under worse conditions. And well, it was pretty disgusting. That's what the 13th Amendment did. It created the chain gangs. Chain gangs became famous. You know what else we got out of chain gangs? Adolf Hitler used it as his model for slave labor camps. Slave labor camps were different from concentration camps. Concentration camps were extermination camps. Slave labor camps were for anybody who spoke out against the Nazi government. Amsterdam. This place is famous for a woman named Anne Frank. A young woman named Anne Frank. And many of you may know her story. The college students in Amsterdam, they were given a choice. You can either sign pieces of paper saying that you support the Nazis, or, here's the big one, you can go to a slave labor camp. So 80% of the college students, over 80% of the college students in Amsterdam, well, they didn't want to be Nazis. They refused to sign that piece of paper saying that they support the Nazi Party. 80% of the college students in Amsterdam were sent to slave labor camps. Now, why were all these black folks prior to that model used and sent to these slave labor camps? Chain gangs? It's because they were homeless. And homelessness is a crime. To this day, it's a crime. To this day, it's used in exactly the same way. But it's not just black people. Anybody can end up in a slave labor camp here in the United States of America. Anybody who is homeless is automatically breaking the law. If you're a homeless person who's drinking a beer, people say, well, you're homeless, you shouldn't drink a beer. But if it's a blanket, well, that's illegal too. 40 hours of community service for trespassing on public land. 20 hours of community service for urban camping because you have a cover over you. And it doesn't have to be a blanket. If you sleep under a bridge, you're breaking the same laws. The urban camping laws and the trespassing laws. Trespassing is a crime of dishonesty. So we're talking about 60 hours of community service, but not just 60 hours of community service. We're talking about the money that you have to spend. How much money do you have to spend? Over $400 for those two. That's just for the first offense. What does it become after the second, third, fourth, fifth offense? It becomes pretty expensive. So if it's raining, you can't use a blanket, you have to stay out in the rain. If it's snowing, you can't use a blanket, you have to stay out in the snow. You can't hide under a bridge. You can't hide under the library. You're breaking the law if you do. That's why I used to make my rounds when I passed out blankets, is so that I could wake people up before the cops got there. To give them a ticket that would destroy their lives and cost them an entire month of their life. Meanwhile, there's still 29 more days, average, in that month that they still have to sleep. When I caught Emery and Arturo with Alicia Bollinger and Natalie Bollinger at the age of 14, underneath the Boulder Public Library, each one of them in a blanket with one of those old men. Well, that was because I was making my rounds, going to the places where hobos that I gave blankets, as a responsible person should, so that they don't get that ticket for using an illegal blanket that I gave them. Now we make fun of the Black and Boulder charge, But it's not just used against black people. It's used against anybody who's homeless. If you're homeless in Boulder, Colorado, you have less rights than a black person in a house. Those Boulder police officers who harassed that young man for having a bucket and a claw, well, they confused him for a homeless person. However, he wasn't homeless. He hadn't experienced the sheer brutality that the Boulder police are capable of. Had he experienced that sheer brutality, he would have known to put down his bucket and his claw, or he'd have been beaten down. Now, they may absolve these officers of their crimes against this man by saying, hey, we thought he was homeless. And they'll probably let it go. I'm going to continue speaking out about this because, seriously, it's a major issue. The Boulder police are going to do everything in their power to try to make sure that their officers get off scot-free. Everything in their power. What I want you guys to do, not that you guys actually give a crap, but I want you to push real heavy with the Black Lives Matter. I want you guys to get together with them. Sure, you're not black, you're homeless. Doesn't make a difference. Those rights that they're fighting for are your rights too. So when you see Black Rights Matters or Black Lives Matters marching, I want you, even as a white homeless person, or a female homeless person, or an Asian homeless person, I want you to march with them. Because those are our rights that they're fighting for. It just so happens that they're really only focused on if it happens to black people. I'm not. I see you as a human being. However, if you're not willing to stick up for their rights, you can't expect them to stick up for yours. If you're a homeless person who's a racist asshole and you hate black people, well, you are letting your rights get stomped on and you deserve homelessness. If you're gay, I've stuck up for your rights. I want you to march with these people too. If you're a woman, I've stuck up for your rights. I want you to march with these people too. That's the fact of the matter. Whether I agree with the whole Black Lives Matter just focusing on black lives, those are our rights they're fighting for. So get on that shit. Don't be a bitch.